Hi, welcome to my second installation of Spirit Lift Sundays. As you can see, I'm still getting used to what this looks like and how it's going to be moving forward. I set the intention for it to be at 10 o'clock in the morning, but my morning got away with me this morning. So here I am. It is noon Pacific time. I am here on the Southern California coast and still working on what I think will be the best time of day to have these messages go forward. Because, you know, we live in an international timeline, so I never know what is best for everyone. And trying to pick a time when more people can be present, of course, is always a good thing. So I'm joining you here today, and the message I've been feeling called to speak about today is one about being the change we want to see in the world, and then also how small shifts can create big changes. So I'm part of an event coming up next weekend called Small Shifts, Big Changes, which got me really thinking about what that means. And the visual that comes forward for me is, you know, how if you imagine that you're on a ship and you're creating a destination on the ship, and if you don't continually adjust the rudder, if you will, then you won't end up at the destination. So sometimes things come along in life that kind of push us off course, and if we don't go through continually course correcting, we may end up very far from the original destination. And so it's really important to continually course correct. And those course corrections can be very small shifts in thinking and in planning. So here we are now, and the destination is creating an entirely new world. So what do we do to course correct in order to create this new world? We can continue to live in default and continue down this course that ends us up in a continual fear-based reality that we've been living in, and eventually driving ourselves into a completely controlled dystopia. Or we can consciously choose to course correct. What that requires is that we gain such a vision of the world that we want to create that we are continually creating small shifts and course corrections to stay in that vision. So what's happened with humanity over the years, over the decades, over the millennia, is that we've been slowly going into a deeper and deeper reality based in fear. Now, how did this even get to our planet? My understanding is that's what the story of Adam and Eve is all about. It is a parable for what happened thousands of years ago on our planet. Now, understand that nothing happens that isn't also happening in the spiritual realm. So for me, this human experience, I call it the great human experience, is like the most complex video game ever created. It seems to be the best way to explain it now in this world where our video games have become so complex that now when you're playing a virtual reality game, that you as the player get to choose all of the different path choices in order to get to the destination that you want at the end. So I think about, for example, the game Detroit, which was one of my daughter's favorite games a few years ago. She played every single one of those life paths to get to the destination. The destination for the game was for the protagonist and the other the good guys, if you will, to cross out of America and into Canada where they would be safe. All of the timelines within that game were ultimately to get to that destination. And how they arrived at that destination had to be making all of the correct choices in order to make that happen without, you know, dying in the process. So that's kind of how this game of life is, the great human experience, where ultimately the collective goal is to arrive at heaven on earth. And we are here, each of us playing that game. The entity that's playing the game is actually our higher self that is streaming through each of us as our consciousness. And so rather than trying to figure out how to play the game, this is why so many people have used the term prayer, to pray and ask for what is next, so that way we make the best choices moving forward. Because as we're here in this earth field game, it's a lot harder to recognize the choices. We can always ask up, what is the best choice? And in that asking up what the best choices are, that allows us to continually course correct so that we are going toward the direction that we want to go, which is collectively, again, as humanity moving toward heaven on earth. So this story of Adam and Eve is about how this planet was once a planet of peace. This was once Gaia's garden. And that we as a collective of souls decided to descend onto this earth playing field and play out this incredibly complex game that has been going on for many, many, many thousands of years. And depending on which experience, could even be in the millions of years. There was a point in our collective soul choice where we agreed that we wanted to experience the contrast. We allowed collectively, as a consciousness of souls, to allow fear to become part of our human experience so that we could learn through it. The ultimate goal, if you will, the ultimate life purpose that every single one of us have is to experience the contrast and see if we can find our own light within the darkness, and see if we can remember that we are love embodied within the contrast of fear. Ultimately, we all have exactly the same life purpose, and that is it. So we chose to descend into these human forms to experience the contrast, to learn through the contrast, and to try to remember who we really are. That has been the most difficult game to play, because as fear came onto the planet, what we all know about fear is that fear is so good at disguising itself that it takes work to decipher what is fear and what is love. It is so good at deceiving that it disguises itself as love. And so it really requires a real conscious mind and a conscious heart to be able to decipher the difference between love and fear, light and darkness. Now, understanding that all of that is God. And that's really difficult too for a lot of people to understand, because there are so many people right now who think that I've been hearing this God wins floating around for a couple of years. And my understanding is that all of it is God. So how can God win against itself? It is that God is the energy of love, and everything is the energy of love, and fear is the lowest vibration of love. And it has expanded itself so much on our planetary experience that has basically created, it's become a self-propagating organism of control. That's why it's so difficult to decipher it from love, because it is embedded like a virus into absolutely everything on our planet. It exists within all of our religiosities. It exists within all of our systems. It exists within everything as like a spider web that has woven its way into absolutely everything, and has become, what happens is that it becomes so dark on our planet that it requires a new being of light. My understanding is about every 500 years, a new being of absolute light, or mostly light, comes onto the planet to help recorrect that. So, for example, one of those was Buddha. One of those was Jesus, or who I prefer to call Yeshua, who comes in, brings more light onto the planet, and then corrects the balance. So right now our planet has been very much out of balance. We have been living in a primarily fear-based reality. And that fear has become so pervasive that it's been very difficult for people to find their light and to find their love within that dark contrast, because it is so out of balance. But what's happening on the planet right now is that all of us are bringing in the light. This time, it isn't just one spiritual teacher. It's all of us who are embodying the light and bringing it in and anchoring it into this human experience. Now, what's happening is that there's so much light now flooding the planet that the darkness is beginning to dissipate. And I know it doesn't look that way right now. I know right now it looks like it is dark, dark, dark. And you know the old saying that it's always darkest before the dawn? That, in fact, is true. That's what 2020 was all about. That was the darkest before the dawn. Now, the new age of enlightenment, the new earth that we're all creating is here and present. We enter the new earth reality that's already been created for us by Spirit on December 21st of 2020. That's why 2020 was so dark, because it was the darkest before the dawn. Now we have entered the dawn of this new earth. It's been called the Age of Aquarius, where all of humanity will begin to prosper. It's the golden age of humanity, the age of prosperity, heaven on earth. And it is all based in us working together as one human family, as one human experience. And we all become one under the law of one and the law of love. The reason it's feeling so dark now is because the lighter the light gets, the darker the shadows appear. And so don't be surprised as we move forward from this point forward, as we're bringing more and more and more light onto the planet through each of us, that the shadows become darker. And what's happening is that the shadows are going to start revealing themselves. And so for people who don't understand that this is the shadows being revealed, as we know, as the light rises, the shadows look even darker until noonday sun, when there is only light. What's going to be a while before we get to that point, because that is how evolution works. We can't instantly have light. Well, we could technically. In this human experience where we recognize time, it will take time to get to that. In the universal experience, there is no such thing as time, so it is already done. However, in our human experience, as we see everything as a timeline moving forward, in our concept of time, it will take a while for us to get to the point where it is all light and the contrast ceases to exist. So for now, what we are going to be seeing is more light and more darkness. So much of the darkness that's been on our planet is going to start being exposed, and we as a community, a human collective community experience of the one earth that we are now in, it's amazing, because at this time in our collective reality, there is one earth. We've never had that before, up until, the invention of the internet, where the entire planet is experiencing itself as one planet. We no longer have to wait for days, months, years to connect with other people on the planet. Now it's instantaneous. We are essentially in the age of instant gratification and instant manifestation. And the internet has allowed us to have that, to experience that. And so it's important to understand that the more we raise our own light, the more our own personal shadows are revealed, and the more the collective shadows are revealed. And it's up to each one of us to remember that as we discover that we are the light, and the way to God is through ourselves as love embodied in each and every one of us, that we are also the ones who will transmute the darkness. And we are also the ones who will increase the love vibration on our planet. That's what it means to be the change we want to see in the world. So up until this point, many people have had this belief that other people, they're looking to a leader, they're looking to a spiritual master, they're looking to a president, they're looking to someone else to be the one to create the change in the world. When the truth is, it's really up to each and every one of us, because every single one of us is the light and is the love that are creating this new earth reality. And that also requires that more of us get down out of the bleachers and play on the field. Because so many people have had this, I'm just going to sit back here and hold the light and hold the love and watch what plays out in the field and just send light into it. And yes, that is important. We need more and more and more and more people willing to get up out of the darkness and stop wallowing in the fear and the misery and the blame and the resentment and the victimization. Those are all fear-based. That's not even playing on the field. That's, the visual I'm getting is hanging out in the bathroom. not even playing the game on the field, and not even sitting in the bleachers holding the light and love. It's playing in the hiding out where the dirt and yuck is. So every single one of us have got to stop playing in the field of fear, playing in the, hanging out in the back, not even being willing to play the game, but at least come out and remember that we are love and we are light embodied, and sit in the bleachers and send love into the game. And some of us are here to be active players in the game. I know that I'm one of them. So being the love and being the light is actually anchoring it and embodying it, so that the fear no longer has any play within the being of who we are. So that every aspect of who we are is the embodiment of love and is the embodiment of light. So what that feels to me, the message that was coming in this morning, is remembering in this new earth that we are creating, is that every word we speak and every word we write and everything we are being comes from the heart. Our heart light is the heart of source, the heart of God, the heart of spirit, whatever your name is for the creator of all that is. That light streams down through each and every one of us. We are a stream of God consciousness embodied as us. And the more we expand that heart light out through us and into everything we touch, the sooner we create this heaven on earth that we all want to create, that we've been talking about for thousands of years. Actually, back since the beginning, back since we allowed fear to become part of our collective experience, we've been trying to get back home to heaven on earth, heaven within ourselves. And so it's about remembering that we grow our own heart light. What that means moving forward is that everything we touch, everything we do, everything we speak, be about love and be about light and be about service to humanity and service to the whole. That's how we dissipate the darkness. That's how we dissipate the fear that is attempting to control humanity. It's about each one of us being that light and asking ourselves, how can we be of maximum service to the greatest good of humanity? It's about pulling out the ego of, but I'm not making any money doing it. What Spirit has made very clear to me is that when we do our heart's work, and we work and everything we do is for the greatest good of humanity, that all of our needs are automatically met in this new world that we're creating. That every single one of us is that. So stop worrying about how can I make money, and stop worrying about whether my needs are going to be met. Because as long as we are in our heart space and being of service from the power of the heart, all of our needs are automatically met in this new earth reality. And here's one thing that I have, but that I was shown a few years ago, and why I can speak so confidently about this. What I was shown a few years ago is that the new money that is being made available to humanity is coded at such a high vibration that only those in love will be able to access it. And only those who use it for a loving purpose will be able to access it, which means the tables have been flipped. And all of those who are in fear and desperation will have a much more difficult time accessing this new line of prosperity. And those who are working solely in greed won't be able to access it because their vibration isn't high enough to be able to access it. So it's up to each and every one of us to hold ourselves in the highest possible vibrations of love and light, and continue to ask ourselves, how can I be of best service to humanity? And completely forget about service to self. Now, it's important to decipher between service to self with a small s and service to self with the capital S. So service to self with a capital S is service to spirit through each and every one of us. Remembering that our self is a divine emanation of spirit having a human experience. And that as we serve the self, the loving self that we are, that who we are then emanates out through us. And as we are in service to self, which means dismantling everything from ourselves that is not our divine self, that is peeling off the layers of fear-based beliefs, peeling off all of the layers of who we are not, we become more and more and more of who we are as divinity having a human experience. That's what service to self is. It isn't about service to the ego that is in fear and how can I get more stuff. That's service to self with a small s. Service to self with a big S is how can I be of service to the divine self within me. And understanding that being of service to the divine self within me, within myself, only through me, which is what Yeshua actually meant when he said, only through me can I get to God. He actually meant only through me can I get to God. And so it is for each of you. He wasn't talking about himself. He was trying to teach every person who listens to understand that God is within, and we can only find God within ourselves. And so that is what it means to be of service to the higher self, that is service to God through me. And understanding that as we are that we then expand that service out through our heart, that we are the light, and actually out through our heart that we then light the way for others to find that light within themselves and to find that loving within themselves. That's who we're all here to be. And that trust is a really difficult one. I know, I understand that. That trusting that as we follow our heart, as we follow divine source guidance through each of ourselves, through our heart, that all of our needs and then some will be met. It takes that we really learn how to laser vision on the world we want to create and who we want to be in the world we are creating. And a willingness, if you're feeling called, to come down out of the bleachers and be an active player on the field. And as an active player on the field, we move intentionally with our hearts to dismantle the fear and the darkness on our planet, so that once again we can restore this beautiful place. This is paradise. Gaia is one of the most beautiful planets in the universe. And together, working as one family, we can restore Gaia's garden and heaven on earth. And this isn't going to happen through government systems. It's going to happen through each one of us as an army of light, locking arms and creating the world we want to create through our own heart, through our own humanitarian projects, through our own teaching purposes and projects about continually course correcting when we feel ourselves going off path, and laser focusing on the destination so that we don't get distracted. So that's my message for today. To remember to be the one we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are, now more than ever. And to be the change we want to see in the world, because this is about every single one of us embodying that we are the ones we've been waiting for, and that we be the change we want to see in the world. And that as each one of us embody that beingness, the world will change. Again, it isn't just as it's not about changing who we are. It's more about remembering who we are as divine beings having a human experience. The same holds true with the planet herself. It isn't about changing the world. It's about remembering who this planet is and assisting Gaia in becoming who she always was, as even herself, a divine being having an earth experience. It's about peeling all the layers of fear-based beliefs off of Gaia herself. That's the role that we're here to play. I've never had that download before. That's really fascinating. That it isn't about changing who we are, and it is about changing the earth. It's about remembering who we are and remembering who she is, and coming back into the wholeness of who we are, our holiness, and remembering the wholeness of who Gaia is and restoring her to her holiness. Ultimately, that is why we're here. To be and bring about heaven on earth and restore earth to the garden of peace she once was. So that is my message for today. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look at what's happening in the chat, see if there's anything over there that is calling for my attention, and any answers that I can question, any questions that I can answer over there. Thank you, Randy, Regina, and Ashton. I hear you, Ashton, about the fear. Part of the reason that there's so much fear right now is that we are, a lot of people are spending too much time, well, for one, watching television. It's just not something that I do, because everything on TV is literally intended to feed us fear. The news exists for the sole purpose of feeding us fear, and many of the movies on television exist for the sole purpose of feeding us fear. That's why it's called television. It's about telling us the vision that fear wants us to create, to continue to propagate in our reality, and I refuse to participate in the vision of fear. There's also needs to be a willingness of being able to look at all of your beliefs and to recognize whether they are fear-based, because whether we know it or not, fear is being fed to us from every possible direction. And even, yes, even in our religiosities. So it's about learning how to decipher whether the beliefs are fear disguised as love, or whether they are actually love themselves. Again, the best way to stay out of fear is one, the very best way to stay out of fear is to, and I always say this, to begin with gratitude, because once we can shift our focus on gratitude and complaining cannot exist in the same space. So once we shift our focus to gratitude, it begins the process of dissipating all of the fear and darkness in our lives. So I hope that helps to understand how to begin shifting out of the mindset of fear and into the heart set of gratitude. Otmar, it's so great to see you here. I have not seen and talked to you for several years, and thank you for being here. Thank you, and thank you for your beautiful note. Otmar says, fully with you, dear sister. Greetings. We are amidst the transformation on the deepest level. Thank you for being present. Yes, we are, and more than ever in written history. Stay tuned and thank you. Yes, ever more than ever before in our human experience, we are all being asked to be the ones we've been waiting for more than ever. And this is it. I mean, this is the ascension. It doesn't look the way we expected it to look. It doesn't look the way the revelations told us it would look, but understand that's also an interpretation. We are in the midst of the Great Awakening, and we are in the midst of the ascension, and we are in the midst of creating heaven on earth. And when enough of us remember that that's what's happening, then it's easier to look at all of the darkness that's swirling around us and recognize that the darkness has to come to the surface in order for us to heal it and transmute it. That's why it's coming to the surface, for to recognize it and to transmute it, not for us to wallow in it. So remember that. Susan, thank you for being here. Randy, thank you, thank you. Oh, Regina, yes, I'm so glad that my question helped with that. The important thing is that we try at all times to remember that we are love and light embodied, and that every single one of us is a stream of consciousness of divinity. I know that a lot of our religions have taught us that we are separate from God, and that we have to go through our religion to get to God, or we have to go through spiritual masters to get to God. And as we begin to remember that we are that, we are all that is. We are all an aspect of all that is. God is all that is, and God is love, and we are all aspects of that. And therefore, I am love. I am all that is embodied as me. And I am a stream of source. And because I am a stream of God's source embodied as me, through me all things are possible. As I am love embodied as me, through me all things are possible. It isn't about, through God all things are possible, but because we are all aspects of God, therefore through each of us all things are possible. When we remember that, it begins to override fear and ego. Because through each and every one of us, all things become possible. And the more of us who start to understand that, the more of us who recognize that, the more of us, we begin to create a web of light around the planet. What's been really fascinating over the last couple of months is seeing all of these light bodies starting to show up in my life and starting to create this web of light across the planet. And I think I showed this to you guys last week. This came to me a few years ago. I have to show this. This is called Metatron's Cube. And Metatron shared that with me a few years ago. And I was told that that was what our new reality was going to look like. So I know that was an awfully quick visual of that. If you Google Metatron's Cube, you'll get an idea of what that looks like. And if you can find a three-dimensional image of what that looks like, it is fascinating. That's the world we're creating. That is the world we're moving into. In this new Earth reality, what many are calling the fifth dimensional Earth reality, we are all light beings interconnected in this beautiful web, and no one is disconnected from anyone else. We are creating alliances, we are creating cooperatives, we are creating collectives, and we are creating these lights where never before has this been possible, because in the physical world, we have the internet. The internet allows us to intercreate in a way that we've never had access to before as one Earth. It is the way that we are intended to intercreate. And we have reached this point in our human experience where we're able to do that. This ascension of planet Earth and the collective of all of her beings was not possible before that. Now we can, in a unified field, which is, it's something that Einstein was trying to figure out how to quantify, because the unified field has always been real and present on our planet. That's why one person can have an idea on one side of the world and another person on the other side of the world can have exactly that same idea. It's the same reason why animals on one side of the world can learn how to use a tool the same time animals on another side of the world, that same animal on another side of the world is learning how to use a tool. This isn't about evolution of species. I'm talking about the evolution on one side of the planet and on the other side of the planet getting the idea at the same time. That's called the unified field. So we have always had that ability to integrate in that unified field. However, the internet has made it possible for us to physically be able to do that in an instant. So rather than focusing on all of the darkness that's coming to the surface and how the internet has been used to spy on humanity, for lack of a better word, and has been used to control our thoughts and create a controlled narrative, which is also part of the internet. Remember, there is a dark side and a light side to everything. The contrast exists in all things. So what's really important is that which side of the contrast we choose to focus on, because both of them exist. The issue is that most of humanity, until fairly recently, has been focusing on the dark side of the contrast, not even knowing that that's what they were focusing on, unconsciously rolling around, if you will, in this unconscious fear-based narrative. It's, you know, history repeating itself. It's the same story over and over and over again, rather than focusing on the light side of the story. So on the light side of the story, history repeating itself is because we haven't learned the lessons yet. So once we collectively take a look at the story and process it with gratitude and forgiveness and understanding, and learn the lessons from the collective human story experience, then we can move into a new reality where history no longer repeats itself because the lessons have been learned. Ultimately, that's it, right? It's seeing the story. It's all the darkness coming to the surface for us to recognize and transmute. And it's up to each and every one of us to be part of that transmutation process. We are that. We transmute the darkness with our own light. We transmute the fear with our own love. And all of that comes through the heart. Now, what's fascinating about that is that we had a third dimension, fourth dimension convergence in 2012. So a lot of us were expecting, magical ascension to happen in 2012. What happened in 2012 is that the fourth dimension converged with the third dimension. The fourth dimension is very, very, very emotional. It was the beginning of activating our hearts and creating a bridge for us to more easily navigate into the fifth dimension, which is solely based in love. And so people who haven't been understanding what the fourth dimension is, it's really, really easy to get emotionally wrapped up in the darkness and emotionally wrapped up in the dark aspects of the fourth dimension. And so it's up to each and every one of us to instead get wrapped up in the beautiful, loving parts of the fourth dimension. That's activating our higher heart so that our heart can work to a higher potential and we can stream in the loving consciousness of source, and our heart can expand into a greater awareness of our own infinite possibilities. That's the gift that the fourth dimension has given us. Yes, the lower heart of the fourth dimension, because it's so driven by emotion, is very dark and very depressing, which is why, and it's very divisive, which is why we're experiencing so much division. And so it's up to each and every one of us to pull ourselves out of the dark parts of the fourth dimension and ignite the higher heart of the fourth dimension so that we can more consciously transmute all of the darkness of both the fear-based reality of the third dimension and the contrast that exists in the fourth dimension. Here's a question from Lynette Smith. Lynette, let's see what you have to say. I believe that evil has been removed and destroyed from this planet. We're still manifesting a negative reality. I believe that once the sleeping humans see it for themselves, the world will change. Love, peace, health, and prosperity. Absolutely, Lynette. So that was also a huge part of what was happening in 2020. As I started saying at the beginning of last year, before we even knew that COVID existed and we all needed to go inside and be safe from the darkness, that what Spirit was saying to me is that light can work wonders under the cover of darkness. So part of what was happening in 2020 is that a lot of the dark entities from our planet, what we would call evil, started to be extracted from our planet. What I haven't said out loud to too many people is that in February of last year, I saw Ezekiel, from the Bible, started communicating with me. And he told me that he was bringing his ship to help clean up the earth. And what's interesting is a couple of days after that, a friend of mine showed me a NASA image of a dark spot moving between the earth and the sun. And it looked like Ezekiel's ship. And there were many of us that got that same message. So Ezekiel in the Bible is an ascended master. Angels, ascended masters, benevolent ETs, it's kind of difficult to decipher between them because they are all here in our field assisting the ascension of humanity and the earth herself. So he was showing me his spaceship, which is actually like a time machine. It has a holodeck on it that can actually transport. It's a transportation device, so it can transport beings from one place to another place. So my understanding is that he was here removing dark entities from our planet and taking them elsewhere, so that they're no longer being allowed to play on our field. So what I was being shown about 10 years ago was that Earth is a learning planet until the time that we as a collective of souls determine for it to no longer be. Our souls as a collective have chosen now to move into the ascension reality, which is a reality based in love and the return to heaven on earth, which means that collectively we have chosen to no longer have the game of contrast. So we have guardians, the guardians of light, as I call them, who are assisting us in this process and assisting in extracting the darkness and the fear from our earth fields, so that we can restore it to a place of love and peace and harmony that it once was. We won't see the evidence of this overnight because, again, in our reality, we have this thing called time. However, it has already happened. So the purveyors of darkness, the lords of darkness, the overseers of darkness have been removed from our planet. What we're going to be seeing over the next couple of years is the rest of the darkness beginning to crumble. It's going to be, our systems may start to crumble because the darkness is being extracted from them. And that the minions, if you will, those who have been playing in the dark, are going to be brought to the surface for resolution. We may start to see them being removed from their positions. It won't make the news. Some of it will make the news, but a lot of extraction of the darkness and fear from our planet is just going to look like business as usual. It will just feel different for most of humanity. And those of us that are conscious and aware of this process are being asked to be guiding lights to help the rest of humanity move through the process. So thank you, Lynette, for bringing that forth and forward, and I completely agree. So for those of us who are spiritually awakened, if you will, we can feel it. I go outside and I can feel the contrast. I can feel the people that are still living in this fear-based reality, and I can feel the people that are living in the love-based reality. We are there's what's happening is the correct term is a bifurcation of worlds. I started calling it the two earth split. So that's actually what we're creating now, are two earth experiences on the same planet. Eventually what will happen is that the the lower vibrational world will eventually cease to exist, either by beings transitioning out because they cannot raise their vibration to light speed, and by others who are then able to raise their vibration to move along into this love-based reality. So it's up to each one of us to hold that love and hold that light and be the change so that others can find their way across the bridge and into this new world that we're creating. Now, eventually those two worlds will completely split apart. I don't see that happening for at least another 3 years, because more and more people are going to start having their spiritual awakening experiences and crossing the bridge into the love-based reality. Thank you, Lynette, for that confirmation. Yeah, so what I'm hearing right now from Spirit is that the key is to not hold resentment toward what has been and what it presently appears to be real. Because the more we hold our heart in resentment, we actually block ourselves from the love that we have access to and from the light we have access to. It's basically like, the visual I'm getting is a trap door. So it's like closing a trap door on ourselves so that the love and the light cannot get in, cannot get through. So we have to open the trap door and allow more love and light to come through and actually disseminate the fear and the darkness. And that means also disseminating the resentment, because resentment is one of the fear-based energies that is holding humanity presently in this trap. The trap of continual victimization and resentment. Those are all based in fear. So each one of us have to be able to do our own personal shadow processing of no longer being in resentment, of no longer holding ourselves in the energy of victimization, and instead be willing to look at our collective dark story, his story, our collective past, and the pain and the suffering, and use our transformation tools to be able to transmute and transform it into, so that it becomes nothing more than a learning lesson. Because as long as we hold resentment and victimization toward our past collective experiences, we will continue to experience that. And it is the fear-based reality that is trying to drive us apart and trying to drive us into resentment toward each other and drive us into a continual feelings of being a victim, so that we can't rise above it, right? It's a trap. As long as we keep swirling around in that, we won't be able to ascend. And so it's up to each and every one of us to do our own personal shadow work. Any kind of resentments and blames that we have within ourselves and toward our own stories need to be processed. And then we can spread that outward into the whole of humanity, so that humanity no longer feels resentment and trapped into victimization about the story that we have collectively experienced. So the way to transcend our own story is through processing it. The way to transcend and ascend as a collective is to process our collective story. And we do that by consciously choosing to process our own stuff. It isn't fun. It isn't pretty. It's what's happening on the planet right now collectively. That's why it looks so painful and ugly, because processing the shadows, doing the shadow work is and can be very uncomfortable, and it is incredibly liberating. So let's not be afraid of looking at the shadows and processing them, because that's how we move into more light and more love and more of this world of heaven on earth that we are creating. And rather than holding those who are in fear and darkness in resentment and in blame, do as Yeshua would do. Remember to love your enemies and pray for those who spitefully use you. What he meant by that was to send love and send light to the ones you perceive as being evil. Pray for them that their hearts will be healed. Pray for those who are still stuck in the darkness, that they will find the light within themselves. Send them love, that they feel the love within themselves. Send them light, that their hearts are healed. That's what he meant by love your enemies and pray for those who spitefully use you. It's about remembering that we are the light and we are the love and we are the way. And through our love and through our light, the hearts of those who are stuck in fear and darkness can be healed. Yes, we are all that. And so send waves, waves of love and waves of light into every corner of the planet. Connect with all the other light waves, light warriors, light workers. We know who we are. Connect arms with them, that we all together as one can flood this planet with so much love and so much light that peace can't help but happen. That heaven on earth can't help but become real because it's who we are being. And with that, I am going to close out for the day. I'm heading outside to soak up in the gamma waves. I think is for another message, because our planet is being flooded with gamma waves, which is part of the reason that we were told to stay inside, because the gamma waves are activating our superpowers and activating the spiritual gifts that are intended to be within every single one of us. So I'm going to go outside and enjoy the sun, soak up the gamma waves, stick my feet in the sand and connect with Mother Earth and let her fill me up with her love from her heart. And until next Sunday, lift your light so high that others can't help but see their own light.